This is Mario Martinez Jr., and I'm CEO of Vengreso, and I am the host for today's program. And I want to welcome all of you guys from around the world, from Spain to Jamaica to all around the United States. I am excited to be here with you. We're going to get started here right now, and I'm going to be sharing my screen. So hang tight with me while we get this screen sharing going. And if we can make sure that, if I can just get a check here from my panelists, can you all see this? Right there. Good thumbs up. We got thumbs up going on. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Again, Mario Martinez, and you're here for entering into the mind of the marketing executive buyer. If you are a sales leader or in sales and you are selling to marketing, well, we are going to have a great conversation today and really take some time to get into the mind of some executives in the marketing space. So first off, we want to welcome all of you guys and let you guys know that this webinar is sponsored by Gong.io, conversational intelligence platform, and InsideSales.com, both of our partners, and we're excited to have them here with us today as well. In addition, I'm excited to tell you guys that we want you guys to get social on us. That's right. We are here to get social and have some fun. So throughout this session, write this down right now. You can go ahead and post on Twitter or tag us on LinkedIn, however way you like. But if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag, mention at @GoVengreso. That's GOVENGRESO. And our social media team is waiting to engage with you. And if you're on LinkedIn and you want to post something on LinkedIn, just use @Vengreso, VENGRESO. But make sure you use the hashtags sales and enter mind 2019. So here's why. For those of you that are the most engaged on social, whether on Twitter or on LinkedIn, there will be two winners. Two winners. You will receive access to our brand new course, Selling with LinkedIn, which is a online on-demand program. And that is for the top winner on Twitter and the top person on LinkedIn that is the most socially active, that tags Vengreso and uses hashtag sales and enter in the mind of 2019. What do you want to talk about? Anything that our guests might say that you agree, disagree, or that is a great point that you loved. So make sure you get on there, and we will announce those winners tomorrow because we'll tally up those scores. And by the way, Vengreso has put in 3,932 hours, 3,932 hours into the Selling with LinkedIn course. So you're going to love it, and I know it because I was part of it. So any case, let's talk a little bit about the modern buyer. Here are some of the challenges that we are seeing. 67% of the buyer's journey is completed by the buyer prior to ever getting to you. Buyers say that 82% of them consume content from a winning vendor. They consume content from the winning vendor. 62% of buyers read a rep's LinkedIn profile when deciding on whether or not they should meet with them. And 54% of reps have made quota in 2018. And that has gone down. So the question is, are these stats factual? Are they accurate? How hard is it to be able to get into the mind of the executive buyer if you are selling into marketing? And that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today. Can you break through? Can you win confidence? Can you change out or unseat a particular vendor? And with me today, I've got my esteemed panelists here with me. We've got, first up, you see Rashmi Vittal from CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Conversica. Rashmi, say hello to our guests.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And if you're looking at the screen right now, make sure you write down the Twitter hashtags, the Twitter handles, excuse me, not hashtag, handles of each person so you can use that on social. I've also got with me also my friend, Mr. Joe Schwartz, Vice President of Corporate Marketing from Proofpoint. Joe, can you say hello to everyone? Oh, you're on mute, buddy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm happy to be here as well. And you'd think I'd know how to use WebEx and Zoom. But anyway,
That's okay. You're in marketing. You don't have to be IT. All good. All good. So I've also got with me Paul Johns, my friend, Chief Marketing Officer of SAI Global. So Paul, do us a favor. Say hello.
Mario, thank you for having us. I'm really looking forward to this session with you all.
Fantastic. So all of you guys, we brought in some very influential CMOs into this particular webinar that are doing all of you guys a favor and really spending time teaching you guys what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and give their personal opinion about penetrating the office of the CMO. So let's get started. We've got a series of questions that we're going to go through, and I will be the moderator today. I will ask the question. We'll ask our panelists to answer this question. And oh, by the way, there is a Q&A button directly below that Q&A button. Make sure that if you've got your own personal questions, jot it into the Q&A tab, and our panelists, when they're not speaking, they will click on that Q&A tab, and they may either incorporate the answer into their question, or they may personally answer that question to you. So back to you. So make sure you use that Q&A button so that we can track all of this and our panelists can be able to see the questions. First up, this one is an interesting one to our panelists. Oftentimes we hear that you are far along into the buying journey before you ever agree to a first meeting with a supplier. Fact or fiction? Is you or your team far into the buying journey? In this case, Gartner reported 67% of the way through the buying journey before you agree to first meeting with supplier. Let's get the opinion of, let's start with Paul. Paul, you first.
Thanks, Mario. Well, the first thing I would say is my commercial compass is a little situational. And so by that, I mean, oftentimes what I have found is I'm dealing with something quite tactical. For example, we're moving off of Vectron as a web platform to WordPress. And I think I came out of a meeting on a Monday and I just happened to be approached through an EDM that the title literally said, get off Vectron, get onto WordPress. So I would love to say I'm in front of everything and I'm researching everything and I'm super, we all want to be as strategic as possible. But I will say that a lot of the technologies that we use, or a lot of the services we use, what I find is timing is a huge factor. And so I've been surprised over the last year or so, and look, we're in a private equity backed business and things are moving so quickly, that I'm probably not as far along my buying journey as I would like to be. And I would say for those people approaching me, if they hit me at the right time with the right proposition for something that really is, one of the 5 things I care about, Mario, that tends to get my attention. So I'm ashamed to say it. I'm a little more tactical than I would love to be right now. But that's kind of where I am.
Oh, very good answer. And essentially, I think what you're saying is possibly, but possibly not. But you always, it sounded like you said you have a top 5 items that you're working on. And sometimes it's all about the right timing. Right timing is what I heard you say.
Exactly.
Rashmi, let's go with you.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, I think I might echo a little bit of what Paul said, but it really all depends on need and then timing. And those are the 2 things I had. What's my current need right now? And is the timing right to have the communication? I'd add on to that a little bit more and say, sure, if we were all more strategic, if we all had those hours in the day to be more strategic, I'd love to be able to do more proactive research. I frankly just don't have the time. So there's this thing I like to call responsive research, where perhaps I've been pinged by somebody. Maybe I received one of the many email solicitations I get. Maybe I saw something that popped up on social media, on LinkedIn, or maybe I saw or I read something in an analyst brief, right? That might make me respond to and then say, hey, let me take a quick peek and look. I would say, while I know, because I've been marketing myself to CMOs and CIOs for a very long time, I don't believe people are 80% through their buyer's journey, or you had a stat of 67%, like the fact that 80% people have made up their mind. I believe that, and it depends on the levels in which that you are selling to, but I would say that from the top level to a couple levels below, at my level, I just feel like I have a sense of where we need to go. I do my gut checks on a periodic basis. But at any time, if I also look to my team to come to me and tell me, you know, I need help to do my job better, and these are the ways that I think I could be more efficient, more effective, or more productive. And then I look upon them to come to me with a proposal in terms of what it is that they actually need and what they want, and then we can have a dialogue and then determine what's the best path forward. So my buyer's journey may be different than somebody on my team's buyer's journey, and we work together to understand what are the gaps and what do we actually need to fill.
I think you brought up a really interesting point, which is you may not be there, but your team could have been there, and your team
Right.
could be responsible. And likely so, as a CMO, you're expecting your team to go and do the research, to bring insights, to bring valuable feedback. So you personally might not be there, but the team could be. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, that's pretty spot on.
And also, I think consistent between yours and Paul's answer so far, and I don't want to taint Joe's answer here, but sounds like both of you specifically mentioned things that you may have seen coming across your desk. Could be an advertisement. It could be something on social that you saw that is about timing that you plugged into and said, I'm going to hone into this. So Joe, let me have you answer this question. How far along are you, or you might answer it from your team's perspective, along on the buying journey before you agree to a first meeting?
Yeah, so I would echo what Paul and Rashmi have said, but I also, I'll also give my team a business problem I think we need to solve and ask them to help flesh out the requirements. So, and in the process of fleshing out the requirements, we may talk to, or they may talk to a few vendors, bring that back to me, and by the time it gets to me, there may already be a recommendation in place for which provider best fulfills the requirements, and then so we may be a little bit far down the path. I tend to agree with Rashmi that I'm generally not that far as far as picking a specific vendor, but I try to be, before I have a first conversation, I try to be as clear as possible with what I'm trying to solve, so I'm not wooed by a shiny object that could be distracting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good answers. Now, it sounds like timing is everything across all three of your guys' answers there. And if someone is looking to get a meeting specifically with you, the question that I would have is should they be getting a meeting with you, or should they be meeting with your team members first before they get to you? Paul, take it away.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the pain, I guess, that I'm going through. And I'll give you a good example. In the world of private equity, there are measures that I have. So there'll be things like CAC, which are customer acquisition costs. I get very deep into how we're driving, obviously revenue, the R word that a lot of marketers seem to avoid, but is increasingly critical for our roles. And so if I'm speaking to somebody who's speaking private equity language, how can I help you on your value of exit? How can I help you drive CAC? How can I help you with moving from services revenue to subscription revenue, so you're driving a higher valuation for your business? In other words, if I'm speaking to somebody who's speaking my language as a CMO, I will have that meeting. But if I'm speaking to someone who, I think probably the three of us will all recognize as CMOs that we know what marketing BS sounds like. So if I get that person, which I just had today, please, give me 30 minutes of your time because I have a 1400% ROI on our technology. And I'm like, no, that's not the meeting I need to be in, or anyone on my team for that matter. So I think we're very discerning buyers. We have a very high radar for BS, but if you speak my language around the things that are really driving the conversations I'm having with my C-suite, the conversations I'm having with my CEO and CFO, then I make time for those meetings. There's not a lot of them, but I would make time for those meetings, Mario.
I love the insight there. Speak the language of the CMO, of which you're having with your board, the C-suite, and if people are speaking that language, that might govern a meeting, even if the technology possibly or the solution is not top of mind, right? It's something that you're looking at. You're always looking to deal with cost of goods, driving revenue, reducing churn, those types of things. So, but speaking that language, Rashmi or Joe, I'll let either one of you take it from there. And if you have any insights to add.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'd add on top of that is that not every solution it requires, I think, a good percent. Not every solution requires the same target like me as the target audience for them as their primary buyer. I think I am obviously a decision maker in the terms of I hold the purse, I hold the budget, but I don't think every solution out there is meant from the get-go to be heard by a CMO. I think, again, this comes back to, and I just think across, as running the marketing organization, I think first about what is the tech stack I need to make my team run smoothly. And then I think too around what are the people processes that I need to run my sales organization smoothly. And then it just keeps, and then the ring of influence goes out further and further to the point of how do we ensure that we're hitting our targets, hitting our targets, doing so on a timely basis, or increasing our performance or our productivity to get to those targets. And so while I always want to speak the language as me now in the shoes of being a marketer, selling my own solution, hawking my own goods to CMOs, I always try and put our messaging in as if we're in the shoes of that buyer and that prospective buyer. And I'd like the same as well. One thing I'd say that gets my first meeting is, let's be honest, right? I mean, we should always do inventories of the technology solutions we've invested in and make sure that we're getting full return on that investment. So one of the, renewals in general, when it's renewal time, it's a great instigator to have that conversation and reevaluate whether the investment you might have made before or maybe you assumed before is the correct investment moving forward. So in getting a first meeting, or getting that meeting back on the books, renewals is a great thing. I think connection in my network or at work. If I think of somebody talking to me and saying, have you tried this or have you looked into that? Or if we're talking shop and somebody says, well, I may have run across a similar use case and I've used X, Y, and Z, or I've thought about this solution, not necessarily attributed to a specific vendor, then I think that's also a great way to kind of learn. And if somebody can tap into that and get a hold of me, I find that really valuable. And then obviously clearly demonstrate if it translates into they're using the language that I care about, but they've demonstrated that they've done their research. They actually understood our business and they know what, in my case, like what a marketing organization might need at our stage and level. So, I'm not at the buying power of the big boys, right? The big vendors. I'm at the buying power of our size company. And so how have you talked to other CMOs in my size company where we're trying to do the growth and what we're trying to accomplish, and how can your relationships with those customers and the things you've learned there be best practices for me in what it is that I need to do.
Fair. Joe, do you have any insights, or would you like us to go ahead and move on and we can start with you next?
One real quick one. I like to encourage my team to look at new technologies and solutions. So I do like for vendors and new suppliers to talk to my team members as well.
Fair. Okay. Well, that's great insight. So making sure that we don't just focus on the CMO. Let's go now into one of the next questions is, when you consider the most recent solution you purchased, how did that vendor get the first meeting with you and begin to win your confidence? So why don't we start with Joe first with this particular question. How did the vendor get their first meeting? And there's a lot of questions in the Q&A about this particular topic. So go ahead and answer, Joe. Let's start with you first.
So yeah, I'll answer quickly two of them because it's really the same theme. And what it really is, one of them was, frankly, a colleague, a respected colleague of mine, was on the board of a company and reached out and said, I use this technology, you should look at it. And to some degree, while I respect her a lot, I trust that a little less because she's on the board, but I'm going to take a look at it. And I took a look at it and we ended up buying it, a very, very rapid sales cycle. The other was a former colleague who I trust and respect and hasn't sold things to me over many, many years, but brought to me a solution for something that for a problem I actually wasn't looking to solve at the time. And just based on the respect for him and the solution, I listened, and we also entered into a pretty rapid sales cycle. So it's partially about timing, partially about previous relationships or using the network.
So I heard you say the referral. The referral is what got that first meeting. Somebody helping to refer the person into your office, and that was a strong indication of being able to take a meeting. Paul, let's go with you.
Yes, the example that I'm giving does not include the referral component that Joe talks about, but I think Joe raises a really, really good point, which is CMOs really do pay attention to friends of theirs, oftentimes who will be other CMOs, and that definitely is huge. So, make sure you're running those type of networking events. To this question, here's what I would say. We recently changed vendors for an SEO partner. They came, actually, they reached out to me. It turns out they were one of Google's star partners. So they had some credentials that immediately got me thinking, okay, there's credibility and I want to de-risk the SEO strategy. But what really gave me the confidence, and by the way, I've seen this succeed and fail where people have done it right or not done it at all, is when anybody's speaking to me as a CMO about our web presence, it's all out there in the open, right? They can go and check out the analytics. They can look at my website. They can look at my positioning and messaging. If you haven't taken the time and made the investment to spend maybe an hour or two to be able to come into that conversation and speak to me almost as if you are, to Joe's point, kind of one of my team, speaking to me about technology. I noticed this, or have you considered that? Or your content strategy is actually what's negatively impacting your SEO. And be real with me. Don't, to blow smoke, just tell me what I'm doing wrong. Give me some practical, pragmatic advice. But the two vendors I looked at, one of them had clearly gone through our analytics, our website, and had really made the investment. The other one, frankly, did a great presentation, but I asked a couple of very simple questions, and it was clear that they hadn't taken the time. And so I was very honest. And again, as a CMO, I don't know how my co-panelists feel, but I like to educate sellers when they're selling badly to me. And I said to him, I said, listen, I got to tell you, I'm not going to do business with you. It's just really obvious to me that you just didn't invest in the time to learn about my business before you reached out and made this phone call. So the credibility, the credentials, but do your research. And we say this to our own salespeople when they reach out to their prospects as well. And so I was really disappointed by vendor B, but vendor A had really at least spent an hour or two. And that gave me the confidence that they were then going to invest in the relationship once we selected them.
Great insight. So you might work with somebody based upon their credentials, and you use the Google partner as an example. And you also mentioned that it was clearly evident that in this case, the rep essentially, or the sales team, did their research and they knew your business to the best of their ability before walking in and having that meeting.
Exactly.
And those are key elements in terms of things that we just hone in on every single time to salespeople to make sure you understand your buyer and understand their pain points or what's important to them. Rashmi, any additional items you'd like to add there? And by the way, panelists, feel free to look at the Q&A tab. Some of you are answering some of these questions just naturally, so this is good, but feel free to look at that and incorporate some of those answers as well.
No, I know. I think it's been well covered. I don't have anything more to add.
Okay, fair enough. Now, somebody had asked, touch points. And maybe Rashmi, we can start with you on this one. Is it email? Is it a phone call? Is it a LinkedIn connection? Is it engaging on your content? What is the right touch point and cadence of reaching out to you to be able to get that meeting?
Yeah, I'll say it's certainly not calling. It's not using the phone. I would say now in our day and age, all the people I need to be connected with is coming in through caller ID on my mobile phone. Every other number that I don't recognize, I let pass. And very rarely now do even people, I think there's statistics out here that show this, do people even check their voicemail? It's either, if you know somebody, text them if you really need to get a hold of them. So I think that day and age of communication is changing, and it's been changing pretty rapidly. For me, in terms of the other channels, it's really funny. I just have to go back to that need and timing. I am if I'm not, out either at talking to potential prospects or customers or whatnot, or working with my own leadership team, I think a lot of times I'm sitting working on things in front of my computer and I'm looking at my email. And so email is something that will catch my eye. I will say, as probably most people do, you know, you get 100 solicitation emails a day. And through that pack, what rises above the noise? And I think it just comes back to everything we hearkened on. It's the fact, even from that very first touch point, you have demonstrated that you are putting my best interest at the forefront. And so whether that's with the title of the email to the body of the email, it's really showing that you've done your due diligence and that you're coming forward with a very strong open. And look, I'll say this, you could do all those things. If I don't have a need right now, it will probably still fall flat. And that is just nothing other than timing and need. If I do have a need and I see a strong open on our, you know, strong open, strong first touch point, I will respond back to you. So email is great. If it's something that's been lingering in my mind, I'll do my own searching, and do through Google search, I'll search. And then if it leads me to your blog or leads me to something that an analyst might have written, or if I'm on LinkedIn and it's something that happens to pop up because now I've been searching on these things, great, I'll look into that. But I don't think there's any one single silver bullet. I think it has more to do with just that, you know, you have to try and figure out how to send that right message at the right time, but I don't know if it can be so calculated.
So digital referral, research with the right messaging, the need matches to the right timing. And it sounds like you're saying no on the phone, but email is something that you're using, but also multi-touch point may be the case within your network, something on social, an advertisement, and or on email. Joe, what about you? Any thoughts on that?
I would add to that on the note of timing. It is a little bit of an adjacency, but on the note of timing, if the timing's not right, but the problem is real and the solution resonates, if you hit me hardcore, like when are you going to buy on an ongoing basis, I'm going to turn off to you and your company probably as well, even if you leave the company after you fail as a seller. But if you continue to provide me with a trickle of relevant content that's not necessarily sales oriented and adding value to my world around the solution, sometimes even adjacent to the solution or showing that you're watching my industry, I'm going to at least pay attention to your messages as they come. And when I'm ready, you're going to be either the first that I talk to, or you're going to be preferred just based on the relationship we've built electronically.
Love it. Paul? Does sending you a shoe through UPS saying I'm trying to get a shoe in the door, or a foot in the door, does that work?
Well, I was going to say somewhere between skywriting and a mariachi band, probably would be my. But I mean, let's be serious. I mean, I think what you're talking about there is be different, right? You know, I think Rashmi said it. There's so much noise, and I suppose the nature of the outreach should reflect what you're selling. So if you're a creative agency, then I want you to be creative. I mean, I want to feel an ooze of the creativity in the outreach. But to give maybe a bit more of a practical response, whether it's email, I agree, by the way, no one, if anyone calls me, I'm assuming that someone died in the family. I was like, no one calls, right? It's got to be email, or, you know, I mean, I know we're right now we're trialing with a bunch of SMS campaigns, and, you know, I have a view on that. But here's what I would say. Lean into the compelling event. And so we, for example, have just gone through an acquisition. I'm in New York just for the day I just got here. And so in the news, there are things that you should be tracking. They could be appointment releases. They could be the way, you know, government statements that you just put out in your annual report. They could be something in the private equity newswire about a recent acquisition. If you're reflecting on me, a piece of content that exists about my company, and then your language is, you know, Paul, I see that you just closed out on a recent acquisition. I would imagine right now you're trying to think about how to blend two instances of Salesforce to create a common standard. Let us show you how we've done that for other companies that have gone through M&A. You have immediately created a couple of things. One, the channel, regardless of the channel, what I would say is you've created in my mind a sense of urgency and relevance, and you've used content that applies to me and turned it upon myself as a way to get my attention. And so that's what I would say again is, think about the jacking that you can do in the industry by leaning into things about me that are happening. We sell regulatory content, and I will tell you, nothing gets the attention of a buyer than when you take a recent regulatory event that's impacted them and said, hey, I saw you just got dinged by FINRA. I'm sure it was a terrible day. Let me tell you how we can make sure that never happens again. So just really be relevant in the moment marketing and understand what I'm dealing with on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah, what you just described, Paul, is what we talk about in our sales training program for our Selling with LinkedIn program. It's called the PBC methodology. The P is personalize, the V is give value, and the C is drive to a call to action. And it may be a meeting, it may be a question of affirmation, it may be getting your opinion. And you said the acquisition as an example. So someone personalizes it with an acquisition to the message, the message with an acquisition. The value is content addressing how to bring these two instances together. And the CTA might be validating, is this a problem? Or if it is, let's have a discussion about it, right? So that's that PBC methodology that hopefully sales leaders are thinking about. Every single engagement is, are your reps PBCing it? Personalize, giving value, and driving to a call to action.
Right.
Great discussion there. And I think I also heard you say as well, for you, the phone is not something that you're answering. And I think all of you agree that it's just not the mechanism. But interestingly enough, there was a recent study done by one of our sponsors, Inside Sales, that talked about if a rep is using a multi-channel approach to engage with you, could be email, it could be social, it could be a referral, it could be at least 3 to 4, that I think it's the probability, I may be quoting this wrong, it's 400% increase of it going up, the probability of it being able to get to you. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that if it's a multi-touch approach, maybe in where you might be at that moment, text, email, social, a referral, is that the way to be able to get into you or your team's offices? And I'll start with Joe.
Yeah, I would agree a multi-touch approach is the way to do it. I tend to not answer my phone, but if the phone call is followed up with with an email or some social engagement, and ideally on varying up the platforms. So switching up the platforms, maybe it's Twitter one time, maybe it's LinkedIn another time. That tends to be more effective. Just a little anecdote, my phone line, my desk phone line, I don't have a physical desk phone, but my phone line, the incoming messages says, if your call is not important, please leave a message after the tone and I may get back to you in 30 to 60 days. If it is important, send me an email. And if someone follows up with an email and it's something creative that shows they listened to that message, I actually will tend to respond.
I love it. That's a great one. Anybody else, or do our panelists have anything to add, or shall we move on?
No, I mean, I agree. I would agree with Joe. Multi-touch is really important. I would say one thing, and I know this is kind of maybe perhaps blurring the line between an ABM approach and just being spam. I think one thing you have to be very careful against is when you go into LinkedIn and you start connecting your planning and your account planning and who's who within the company that you want to outreach. When it comes to who you're trying to find in your target audience and then what you're trying to sell to. So in this case, if you're trying to sell to a CMO specifically around marketing technology, right? Don't start spamming people like your head of engineering or the head of finance or all these other leaders within the company, because inevitably, you know what happens? They just forward to you what they got and said, you interested? And all it does is it creates more spam. It's like tier 2 spam. And again, I don't want to see that unless frankly, it's something that I've had a concerted conversation with a couple of people on my staff, and I said, you know what, we're looking for this. If you know of anybody, great. Or we come up in a dialogue, we surfaced a problem that we're trying to find a solution to. But don't go start spamming every member on my team and then every member of every other department head's team just so that you can get that phone call. That's what's in my mind is what's going to shut you off real fast. And I think to Paul's point, if you are taking a very concerted ABM approach, part of the whole key of doing an ABM well is that you're absolutely personalizing to that individual what that message is, and you're really being very relatable at that moment to what their need is.
Yeah, and I'll give an example. Actually, all of you all of you are partners and customers here at Vengreso, and one of the particular accounts here from what your guys' organization. When we actually had a discussion around training the organization, one of you had said, "Oh no, we're good. We're good. We don't need any help." But then our sales team actually responded with showcasing where you needed the help at. So we did the research, and I think that's some of the things you guys are speaking to is that you may not even think that there's a need, but if the sales organization can actually prove that out and showcase that, then you can create those opportunities to create that first meeting. And so it really depends on the product or the solution. Let me press forward here with this next question of what form of personalization is relevant and valuable when sales reps engage with you? Now, we talked a little bit about this, and Paul gave the example of, we just did an acquisition. Are you going to reach out to me and talk to me about the acquisition, or are you going to talk about actually what's important to you? Like, talk about what's important to me. So maybe I'll start with, let's see, Paul here, and talk about personalization. What form of personalization? And by the way, sometimes sales reps, Paul, are confused with personalizing to the buyer, meaning, hey, I noticed it was your birthday yesterday, right? Or personalizing to the individual. That example I gave was the individual. Or personalizing to the buyer persona, which is generally CMOs that I work with have these two challenges that are related to their product. Talk about a little bit about that.
I guess what I would say, I think we've covered this fairly well. There is no reason in today's market where we all live out loud, we've all got a social footprint, marketers, but I have an amount of content that I put out. There is no excuse to not lean into an emotional connection with your buyer. So when I think about personalization, I guess maybe what I would add as a layer to that, Mario, is I'm also looking for an emotional connection. And let me give you one example. I wrote a blog about the fact that I happened to see this lady in a hotel lobby in tears a few months ago. And it turns out she was really nervous about a job interview. And I wrote about it. I wrote about how, in business, we have to be compassionate as much as we're passionate. And this guy that reached out to me, we were talking about technology. We were talking about creating emotional connections with customers. And at the end of his semi-templated notes, at the bottom of it, it says, I saw from your blog that you care about compassion the way that I care about compassion. And I can't stress enough that suddenly this note went from being kind of interesting to, wow, this guy is really connecting with something that's important to me. So the personalization, and a lot of people talk about persona work, but I think you have to develop an EQ. And as much as you can understand not the type of CMO that I might be at my age, at my stage, with my type of company, but me as a person. I mean, I got to say, I think CMOs are deeply emotional, fairly thin-skinned individuals who have just a natural passion. I mean, we're the cheerleader squad, with a very sharp edge around developing a revenue up plan and thinking about EBITDA. So we're an interesting kind of breed. But develop your EQ, be creative, don't be afraid or shy of understanding how to connect with me at a personal level. That for me, at least as a buyer, and I might be a different buyer to Joe or Rashmi, but that for me is a level of personalization that I personally respond well to.
Great. Joe?
John, or Paul, I think you said it well. I think I also want to be on top of what my competitors and peers are doing, especially in the space that I'm in specifically. So if you can speak to that, especially if it's unique knowledge that I actually couldn't get anywhere else, and it's got to be true. If it's not true, you lost credibility with me. But and I won't talk to you again or answer your calls or your company's calls. But I think relative to my industry, my space, especially if it's unique and feels somewhat exclusive.
Yeah, interesting. You said that, Joe. Many years back, I used to call on a Fortune 6 company, and I had a very good relationship with the global CIO, a direct report to the CEO. And he said to me, when I asked him the question, how do people get a meeting with you? And he said, don't come in here talking about anything other than how you're going to make me more competitive than my competitors. Tell me something I can't figure out on my own of how you are enabling or others are enabling so that I can not just be the same, but be better than them. And I think that's a great point in terms of really understanding the target company you're going after and what's going on in that space. Rashmi, anything you want to add to this personalization topic?
You're on mute, Rashmi.
Sorry, Rashmi,
No,
you're on mute.
I know I was an enlightening set of words that were coming out of my mouth at that time. No, honestly, I think Paul and Joe covered it really well. There's really not much more I can add. I think given all the things that we've talked about before, you just carry forward the personalization you build upon, getting to know who you're, who I am or who the prospect and lead is, and you show that you're demonstrating that you're still putting that person's best interest at the forefront of every interaction. Oh, Mario, now you're on mute.
That would explain why you couldn't hear me. All right, let's keep on going. And so you notice that we talked about this PBC thing, personalization. Now we're talking about value. And all of you guys had mentioned, like, bring me value, right? Understand what the competition is doing. Bring me value through content, someone said. So how does a sales team bring value in their engagement with you? What are you expecting? And we kind of answered this question a bit, and specifically Paul talked about current events, news, acquisitions, those types of things, understand what's taking place. What about just general content that's speaking to you as a marketer and problems that you may be facing? Should reps, sales organizations be really helping their sales teams learn how to use content to answer specific business problems with engagement with the CMO? Let's start with Rashmi, you first.
Well, I think in terms of bringing value in the engagement, if you have now captured my attention, whether we're on a phone call or in-person meeting or whatnot, you've captured my attention. I think first it starts off with just knowing that you're trying to build a relationship, a partnership, because you understand or you're here to better understand my need, my problems, kind of what challenges I'm facing, and help provide and help address those. So it's very clear in that, and in a way that based on what the need is, whether we're trying to strive to hit a revenue target or strive to be a leader in our market category, whatever it might be, that you're coming together with that understanding. I think the second thing is around knowledge and confidence. I really value when I'm talking to a sales rep or the team, they have true knowledge and confidence in their product and solution, and that product and solution can address my need. They know their facts, they have their numbers, they know what value their solution has brought to other customers with a similar makeup as to mine. They're being as relatable as possible. I think the third thing I look at is not only are you able to address my needs for now, but are you going to be a strategic partner for me into the future? What's your vision for that, and how are you looking to, how can we formulate kind of that partnership together as we move forward? And then there's just got to be an overall level of trust that's built in that engagement relationship. There's got to be an enjoyment and likability factor. I am not somebody who responds well to being sold hard. I don't know how many people are out there, but I don't like the hard selling approach. What I rather have is more of that, let's have that intellectual conversation around understanding what I'm trying to do here as collectively moving this company forward. And coming back to something I've said a few times already, are you truly holding my and my company's best interests at heart in what we're trying to, and how are you a piece of that overall puzzle?
So Rashmi, I take it that those emails that say, this is my 14th message I sent you. Did you die, or I died and fallen asleep, or I fell into a big hole? Can you save me? They don't work, huh?
Yeah, I can't find the opt-out fast enough on those.
Gotcha. Paul, take it away. Value. And also, Paul, if you could incorporate, when people are engaging with you with value, what about the use of video? Does that help to build some added trust in bringing value?
So first of all, Rashmi, just as you said, trust, I literally was writing trust. So you're exactly right. That's the first thing. As CMOs, at least I'll speak for myself as a CMO, I am a little skeptical, right? I'm skeptical of statements around ROI. So I think the likability is important. Developing the trust is important. The video thing, there was a trend about a year ago where people would hold up the board on video and it would be, Paul, it's time to reach out and talk about X. The first time I saw it, it was new and shiny and different. I was like, oh, this, it's kind of being creative. Then by the second and third time, it goes back to Rashmi's points about the kind of comedic emails. Mm-hmm. The first one I got was like, oh, that's cute. And then the second one was like, now this is annoying. So it's tough, right? It's really tough. So here's maybe what I would be looking for as a different way to think. If you're selling to a CMO, be prepared to give more as part of the value exchange. And by that, I mean, I had one vendor I dealt with who actually said, we'll come in and we'll do a 2-day health check for free on your technology stack and no obligation. So as part of the value exchange, my time, and I think Joe mentioned this, I'm really sorry, but we're just so busy. So, the kind of the WIFM is the what's in it for me. And if the what's in it for me is we'll do a health check, or we'll do this consulting engagement, or we're running this workshop on how to get the most out of your Adobe marketing tool, like have a value exchange that really has tangible material value for me. That's number one. And the other one, this is a question I always ask our salespeople to ask our prospects. And for those of you listening today, the one that I urge you to get into with CMOs, ask us what our KPIs are. And just have a very real conversation about how are you measured in your business. And I will tell you, if you're open in a conversation with, I'd love to talk about the KPIs, how you're being measured and how we can help and how we've helped other companies do X, Y, and Z. So get into a very authentic conversation about what's really driving my time and my attention, and be prepared to give up more, right? A white paper's fine. I think I've read maybe 2 white papers in the last 20 years. But if you're prepared to give me something of value, I will pay real attention to giving up my time as part of the value exchange.
Love it. Joe? And
I guess the only thing that I would add is as part of that value that you bring, if there's tools and knowledge you can give me that will help me sell internally to my team, all my stakeholders, and most importantly, to get you the PO, my CFO.
Fantastic.
So if you can help me with those tools.
Now, Paul gave his opinion on the use of video, and one of the things, as you guys all know, that we hate those videos that have the board that say, hi, Paul, right? Because they're totally inauthentic. And what we know is that you're dumping it into a database using one of those solutions that's just taking the first name and putting it on the front, right? That's inauthentic. But a video that specifically is targeted to you, Joe, or to you, Rashmi, or to you, Paul, that you can audibly hear someone saying, hey, Paul, hey, Rashmi, hey, Joe, and actually leaving the message in the form of an audible and visual format, is that more authentic than the hi, Paul, and a generic video message? Joe, let's take that.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think yes. I mean, I think there's something about being authentic and personalized. If you're going to take the effort to create that video, you should make it authentic and personalized. It still matters what you're going to say and how you present yourself. And a video medium is different, right? Is a completely different way that a perception is built. And so you still have to have substance in what you're saying. You still have to do the things we talked about. Do your due diligence. Do your research. You have to have very tight messaging. You don't want to ramble, and you have to get to the point quickly. And if all those things come together, it's hard enough to do when it's in an email or in writing, but now to take into the fact that you could see the person, you could see the expressions that they're making, and you could determine whether something is authentic or not. I think it can be very powerful, but I have a feeling it's hard to execute.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Joe, do you have something to add?
I would say it is very powerful. It helps to build that relationship. it is hard. So your sellers need to be trained to use it and use it right and use the messaging right. But it's definitely powerful. I think it goes a long way in building that one-to-one relationship, because, you know, I buy from people, and seeing them, whether it's on a Zoom meeting or in a video link in an email, that's powerful to me.
I love what you said, and I'm going to put the shameless plug here. That is exactly why Vengreso has a selling with video sales training program, because a fool with a tool is still a fool. And that's super important to make sure you get that right. I want to move on here into this topic here, and maybe Paul, I can just get your opinion, and we have another question or so that we can get the other panelists. When looking at the role of the sales leader, it could be the sales manager, sales director, sales vice president, the CSO, CRO. What is the role of the sales leader in executive alignment with you? Should that happen early on in the process, late in the process, only when you're negotiating a contract? Like, how should a sales rep be telling their sales leader, like, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Leader, VP of Sales, I need you to call Paul John, right? Or should they? Paul, take it away.
So, Mary, let me just make sure I'm understanding the question. The role of the sales leader, you mean for the salesperson to have their boss call me to try and convince me to buy from them? Is that what you mean?
It could be that, or it could be just, do you expect that in the beginning, the executive alignment, or do you expect that more towards the end? More about executive alignment, period.
You know, I'll tell you this. I remember a sales call where the marketing, the EDM was spotting. I mentioned this. This is the Ectron to the Ectron to WordPress, and they got my attention, and I got most of my team on this call. I've never done it before, but it was tactical and relevant, and I was like so thrilled that they were leaning into something that was really real for me that day. And we got on the call, and I realized there were like 9 people on the call from their side of the business, including senior executives. And the first thing I thought is, they're so desperate for my business that everyone's got nothing better to do than be on a discovery call with me. And I thought, well, how many clients do they really have? And are they a viable partner? So I will say, you know, play your hand carefully. You know, think about when you want to get the ace out, and don't fire too quickly, because we'll pay a little bit of attention to how desperate you look to win our business. You know, I think the kind of the 2-step here is, you know, it's going to sound odd, but play a little hard to get along the way as well. Like, listen, I'm in town with my CEO. We know that's bullshit, right? I know you're not in town with your CEO. I know you're on a roadshow and you're trying to close deals for Q3. So we're skeptical, but to the extent that you're working the deal, you're working the relationship, and there are other people, Joe's mentioned this 2 or 3 times, that you're bringing into the conversation that will add additional value and provide additional perspective, I'm happy for them to be in, but I'm not impressed with you bringing in someone senior. It does nothing for me. But you bring in a solution consultant, or the fact you have a rainmaker or an evangelist, or even a pre-sales guy who just closed a deal, to Rashmi's earlier point, to another company the same size as me, who's like, listen, I've just gone through this deployment over the last 3 months, and here's the pain they felt. And I thought it'd be really helpful for you to understand what we learned in that selling process. Just every step of the way, always be adding value, always be adding value. Don't impress me with seniority. It doesn't work.
Great commentary in terms of what you just provided. So let's move on. What's one of the best examples of a vendor partner who transformed into a trusted partner with you? And maybe we obviously don't have more than 5 minutes here to tell a big, long story. So I'll let any one of you on the panel, you know, jump in and say, I've got a story that I think is a really good example of a partner that started from scratch and ended up with a closed one deal and now is a trusted partner. Anybody got a story for us? And all of you are on mute except for Rashmi.
I'm thinking.
And feel free to use Vengreso at any time. I'm just kidding.
Maybe I'll add just one thing very quickly, just because I answered the last question. The trusted partner, what I've learned about trusted partners is they travel with us job to job to job. So interestingly, the trust wasn't developed because of how much they sold to me in my current position. I have used the same Salesforce.com consultant for the last 12 years. And everywhere I travel, I mean, I'm sure Joe and Rashmi can attest to this. There are people that are in our trusted network who, frankly, I just bring in. I just know they're going to get the stuff done. I've got PR consultants I've used the last 8, 9 times. So those trusted networks travel with us. I've known them for 10, 12 years. It takes a long time to build that trust. It's very easy to destroy, as Joe kind of alluded to. But it travels with me 4 or 5 jobs. So that trust is not one story in one company, Mario. It's traveled over my career.
Yeah, I would agree with that more so. I would say, you know, as I was thinking of a story, less of a technology solution vendor, more of somebody, a consultancy agency that helps companies build really strong messaging and positioning. I was introduced to them as a referral at a company I was working at. We worked very closely together. They produced really well. I mean, a lot of conflicts of interest, especially this was at a very large company. To try and get anybody to say yes to a cohesive message is tough. They really help push that forward. And then as I moved from company to company, I would bring them in and have them do that same process. I believe in their process. I believe in how they in the value that they deliver. And I would bring them in. And to me, it got to the point where I could just, you know, call up the person directly and just say, hey, are you available? I want you to be the one assigned to this project. I don't want anybody else because I've worked with you. And I think there's power. I think there's tremendous power in that. And it starts with, have you delivered on your promise? And not just delivered, but have you really over excelled and exceeded? Have you demonstrated a clear approach to success? And it isn't just success in the near term, but success in the long term. And have you built, have you built that trusted relationship with me, such that I know through thick or thin, or through the ups and downs, you will come through with the right solution that we need at that time, and be there as we move forward. In return, you know, I will not only continue to go to you as a vendor, a trusted vendor, but I will absolutely sing your praises to my network and refer you if that need or if that conversation arises. So I think that's kind of the key in any vendor relationship that you're really looking for.
I love it. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to ask this question of Joe here. We've got about 2 minutes left. Joe, your one big piece of advice for sales leaders to help their teams win confidence in business with senior marketing executives such as yourself. And think of this as the context of you're talking to your peer SVP in sales at Proofpoint, right? What is that one big piece of advice that you'd give them to tell their teams?
I mean, find a way to add value to the world, the domain of your prospects. You don't just want to be a seller to them. You want to be a partner, a long-term partner that they bring to their next CMO job. Frankly, whatever solution you're selling at that time, you know, you're selling yourself and you're selling your solution, but bring value in that conversation, in the content you provide, in the dialogue you have, the multi-channel dialogue that you have. Just bring me value and be my long-term partner.
Fantastic. A couple questions that came in. Do you have a preferred communication channel for reps to reach out to you? All of you said it's a multi-channel approach: email, social, video, even in-mails was even referenced. What kind of email message gets your attention? All of you talked about personalize it, bring value in that particular message, and leverage content. Is there one thing that's better than the other? We talked about video, we talked about email, and at the end of the day, it was all about bringing value. You also talked about the power of the referral as a way of being able to penetrate your guys' office. One question that we didn't answer, and I'll just let you guys throw it out here: where do you go to do research? And I think some of you have mentioned you see advertisements. One of you said you haven't read a white paper, but you look at some of this documentation, third-party sites. Where do you go to do research at?
So I would say peers. I look online at Serious Decisions and Topo materials. Content marketing does work with me if it's a relevant topic, and it's quality. Don't create content for content's sake. Create good quality content that helps me, that brings me that value, and I'll hang on to it, and I'll look at it while I'm working out on the iPad and on the commute and things like that.
Fantastic.
I'll just add, Mario, I'm increasingly, I mean, look, we do pay attention to things like Magic Quadrants and Forrester Waves, but I am increasingly looking at peer review sites, G2 Crowds, kind of the glass door of corporate technology. So I dig into some of that.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank our sponsors, Inside Sales and Gong.io, for participating here with us. Make sure you've been tweeting your comments, tag @GoVengreso or on LinkedIn, Vengreso, and use the hashtag sales and enter the Mind 2019. We will let you know if you were the winner of our Selling with LinkedIn on-demand course and program. And of course, you guys will all, as part of this program, you'll all get a gift, which is access to Selling Power Live. If you choose for your entire sales team, feel free to send a message to info@vengreso.com, and you can sign up your entire sales team to get access to a free 12-month digital subscription. And I cannot go without saying, whoops, I did that too fast. I want to thank you, Rashmi. I want to thank you, Joe. And I want to thank you, my friend, Paul. You guys have been phenomenal panelists. And for all of you who participated, I hope you enjoyed the program. Feel free to go to vengreso.com and get further information about our digital sales training programs. And to our panelists, you guys rock. Thank you for joining us today. And Vengreso and all the rest of my panelists, we are out. Take care.